Furuta Junko was born on January 18, 1971 in Misato in Saitama Prefecture. She had one older brother and a younger brother. The young woman attended Yashio-Minami High School and worked a part-time job. All told, she was a well-liked and popular person at school. On November 25, 1988, Furuta was biking home from her part-time job. Mayano Hiroshi 18 and Minato Nobuharu 16 were lurking in the area. Their aim, accosting and raping local women. The two saw Furuta on her bike. Minato kicked Furuta off her bike per Mayano's orders before fleeing the scene. Posing as an innocent bystander, Mayano offered to walk Furuta home. Instead, he took her to a warehouse and threatened to kill her before raping her. He brought her to a hotel where he raped her again. He then called Minato and two other friends, Ogura Joe 17 and Watanabe Yasushi 17, to brag about it. Kept captive. Mayano dragged Furuta with him to meet up with the other three boys in a nearby park. Mayano had connections with the Yakuza and threatened to tell them to kill Furuta's family if she tried to escape. The group, with Mayano as de facto leader, had accosted and raped women before. But they usually let them go afterward. Furuta wouldn't be one of them. Instead, the group took her to Minato's home in Iase in a Dachi ward and gang-raped her. On November 27, Furuta's parents called the police. When her captors found out, they didn't let her go. Rather, they coerced her into calling her parents. She had to tell them that she'd run away to a friend's house and to stop the police investigation. The attack, warning, graphic. The torture inflicted upon Furuta goes beyond anyone's worst nightmare. Her abductors beat, raped, and sodomized her multiple times a day. They invited other friends and low-ranking Yakuza members to assault her as well. And they inserted foreign objects, such as light bulbs and even lit fireworks, into her vagina and anus. These acts caused severe burns, tearing, and bleeding. Her captors starved her and forced her to eat cockroaches and drink her own urine. They forced her to sleep outside on the balcony in the middle of winter. They hung her from the ceiling and used her as a punching bag, damaging her organs and causing internal bleeding. Her legs were set on fire multiple times, her burns becoming infected and full of noxious pus. The smell angered her captors, who beat her even more. They poured hot wax on her eyelids, stuck sewing needles in her breasts, they dropped iron barbells on her torso. This caused further internal damage to the point Furuta lost total bladder and bowel control. Whenever she had seizures, the captors thought she was faking them and continued to beat her. Near the end, it took her over an hour to crawl downstairs to use the washroom due to her injuries. Furuta Junko's near escape. Sources vary on the exact number of days Furuta was in captivity. Most people believe it to be between 40 and 44 days. The captors kept her in Minato's room on the second floor. Whenever adults were around, she was forced to pose as one of the captors' girlfriends. Minato's parents and brother knew what was happening under their roof. However, fearful of his Yakuza connections and abuse, they played along. The other boys allegedly bullied one of the boys they invited over into raping Furuta. After he told his brother, someone ended up contacting the police. 2 police officers came to the Minato house but declined an invitation to inspect it. The officers lost their jobs after this came out for not following protocol. In December, Furuta also managed to call the police. Her captors discovered her and subsequently set her on fire. Despite going into convulsions, Furuta survived. Arrest. According to court testimony, on January 4, 1989, Mayano challenged Furuta to a game of mahjong. Somehow Furuta was cognizant enough to not only play the game but beat Mayano. This threw Mayano and the other captors into a rage, and more torture followed. They doused her limbs in lighter fluid and set her on fire. When more pus began to issue from her wounds, the captors wrapped plastic bags around their fists and continued to punch and kick Furuta. Her body couldn't take any more. Furuta died later that day. Fearful of arrest, they put Furuta's body in an empty 55-gallon drum and filled it with wet concrete. They dumped the drum in an abandoned lot in Wakasu, Koto Ward, Tokyo. The lot was a popular illegal dumping ground for large home appliances. No doubt the captors hoped no one would look too closely at an old oil drum. Later in January, police arrested 2 of Furuta's captors for the kidnapping and assault of a 19-year-old woman they accosted in December. While in police questioning, they accidentally confessed to Furuta's kidnapping and gave the location for her body. They found her body the next day. They arrested the rest of the captors arrested in April. DNA led to the arrest of at least 2 other boys. However, prosecutors only charged them for rape, not for confinement or murder. Furuta Junko's murder, the trial and prosecution. The first trial began on July 31, 1989 in Tokyo. Under Japan's juvenile law, the main perpetrators were known as A, B, C, and D during the trial to protect their identities. Furuta Junko was identified as E. The juvenile law relies on the rehabilitation and education of young criminals rather than strict punishment. It's rare for juveniles to be tried in the district criminal court. Most are either tried in the family court or summary court, the lowest adult court. Due to the heinous nature of the crime, the boys were tried as adults in Tokyo's district criminal court. However, the judiciary still granted them special provisions reserved for juveniles. The court didn't protect Furuta's identity as a minor. Many people called this out after seeing the media splash Furuta's name and photograph in print and television. The court also sealed the names of the captors from the media. Since when did the rights of the criminals trump the rights of the victim? This didn't sit well with the magazine Shuken Bunshun. In their April 20, 1989 issue, they broke anonymity and released the criminals' names. There were specific reasons why they did this. More recently, in 2018, Minato, who changed his first name to Shinji, was arrested for attempted murder. 3. He beat a salaryman with a baton and attempted to slash his throat with a knife. Minato stated he had no intention of murder, but given his past and his flighty testimony, the court didn't buy it. Media reports were scarce on details, barely mentioning his involvement in Furuta's death. Delayed reform. As mentioned earlier, the main goal of Japan's juvenile law is to rehabilitate and support juvenile criminals and reintegrate them back into society. Clearly, that wasn't the case for the 3 who went out and committed more crimes. Yet with this case and others, people started questioning just how effective the law was in punishing juveniles who commit heinous crimes. It wasn't until the Kobe child murders in 1997, in which a 14-year-old boy killed 2 younger boys, that the government made plans to lower the age of criminal responsibility from 16 to 14. In 2014, the law raised the maximum number of years for the imprisonment of a minor 17 years or younger from 15 to 20. It was the same prison sentence the courts gave Minato for his role in Furuta's death. But there's a sneaky little clause in the juvenile law, 7, that states that if a minor commits a crime that is punishable as a capital offense in a criminal court, that minor should receive life imprisonment rather than the death penalty. Conclusion. So why didn't Furuta's killers receive life imprisonment? Is rehabilitation so much more important than justice? Even when the media reported the repeat offenses of the released criminals, there wasn't a single mention of their roles in the Furuta case. It was as if the criminals were still children, and exempt from taking full responsibility as adults. The murder of Furuta Junko is one of Japan's most notorious murder cases involving juvenile criminals. It is shocking in its brutality and maddening in its absence of true justice. Not only has she not earned justice, Junko's imprisonment and torture have been glorified in books, an exploitation film, and even an Ero Guro manga. In the end, despite the public outcry, the killers served their original sentences, and nothing significantly changed in Japanese criminal law as a result. Even worse, a young girl lost her life in the most horrific manner possible, and never received the justice she deserved.